Hey, everybody. Welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, here with this August 2023 preview episode. And because of the time of year on our show, we are all running around trying to get a lot of things done, taking some time off. So this is going to be a solo preview. Now, for those of you who are used to the show, welcome back. This is our podcast about behavior analysis and behavior analytic research. And every week, other than these preview weeks, we discuss a topic in the field and relevant research articles. For those of you who are listening on our free feed, this preview episode comes out at the beginning of every month. If you're listening on our Patreon feed, these come out at the end of every month. And this episode is meant to tell you sort of some general goings-on and what to look forward to in the month of August 2023 on ABA Inside Track. All right. So with that out of the way, why don't we get started? It's been a while since I've had to do all of the jobs of the preview, so please bear with me. Thank you. Well, I guess the first thing we usually do is some sort of banter about sort of what's been going on, but since it's just me, I'll save that for another time. And we'll get right into what episodes are coming out in August of this year. So we have kind of an interesting month this year. We sort of looked at all of the content we've made over the many, many years we've been doing this show, and we decided August is probably a good time in terms of our production pipeline to maybe put out a few things that some of you may have not seen before, as well as a couple of our episodes as well. So that gives us a little bit more time to prepare for upcoming Supervision September, and as well as to take a little summer break. So we've got 2 full-length episodes coming out this month, kind of your normal run-of-the-mill episodes, not to discount them. They're going to be great. And then we have one kind of special bonus and then one unlocked release of a book club episode from last summer's book club that, unless you were on the Patreon, unless you subscribe to us on Patreon, hasn't been available. So we're going to be making that available. So why don't we go into our 2 full-length episodes? So first off, we have a really exciting episode with Dr. Mirari Elcoro coming out to celebrate our 250th episode. We're going to be talking about the history of psychology and behavior analysis. And we'll be talking about that with Dr. Elcoro and going over 2 of her articles on the subject. The first one of those is Murray Sidman and Patient HM, The Role of Behavior Analysis in the Emergence of Collaborative Modern Neuroscience by Elcoro and Backer from the Journal of the Experimental Analysis of Behavior 2021. And then we'll also be discussing a very, very interesting look at history and a way to make history come alive with the paper This Old Thing? Using Old Laboratory Equipment to Enhance Student Learning, also by Elcoro and by McCarley, and that was in Teaching of Psychology 2015. So a very exciting look back into the past. Our second full-length episode is a episode selected by our listeners. So if you subscribe on our Patreon, patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, we have quarterly live episodes where you're able to come in and kind of join our Zoom or whatever platform we're using, and you can sort of watch the episode get made, sort of the raw feed before we edit out some of the misspeak, sort of the technical difficulties. And that also means you get access to vote on what that topic is. And you also get 1 CE for listening if you are so inclined. And so our topic, we had 3. We sort of did a loser bracket for our summer book club as well as for our summer topic. So topics no one has picked before. They've picked before, but have never won the final analysis. So we had 3 topics. We had ethics of fad treatments. We had direct instruction, which is always on every listener poll because, boy, no one ever picks it. And at this point, I think I'm stubbornly refused to make it a regular episode until it is voted on by people. And IEP development for transitioning teens, which we've changed the name since then. And as you can guess, since we changed the name since then, that is the topic that won. It only won, I think, by maybe a vote or 2. I feel a little bad because one of our patrons, Amanda, had said her second choice would be direct instruction if it's a close vote. And at the time that was posted, it was a tie. And I was very excited. I wrote back, you know what? because you asked, it's totally going to be the tiebreaker winner. So thanks for posting, which is why it's always important to post things, because you never know what you're going to get. Unfortunately, though, it was not a tie, and IEP development for transitioning teens won. And I say unfortunately only in the sense I feel bad for direct instruction, not unfortunately because this is also another topic that we're going to be very excited to talk about. It was one that actually had come from an episode we'd done on transition skills, and we had so many extra articles that were related specifically to preparing adolescents to be a member of their IEP team and planning for transitions that we weren't able to put them all in that episode. So this is one that I know and I think Diana and Jackie have really wanted to get back to at some point, and this seemed like a good time as any to have it in our bracket, and we're very excited that it won, even though direct instruction still out there. It'll come someday, I guess. So, but we're very excited to talk about this episode, which we have renamed Self-Determination in IEP Transition Planning, based on sort of the reviews that we did. So that is going to be a live episode, meaning that if you are subscribed on our Patreon feed, you can you'll get a link before, and you can come join and sort of watch us record, or you can watch the video that we take of the episode later, as well as get a special code just for you for one free CE. For everybody else, you're just going to be getting access to this episode at the end of August as normal. So you'll be able to listen to it just the same. And the articles we'll be discussing are Preparing for Life After High School, the Characteristics and Experiences of Youth in Special Education. And that is a brief summary of research done by the National Center for Educational Evaluation and Regional Assistance from 2018. Planning for the Future, a model for using the principles of transition to guide the development of behavior intervention plans by Mueller, Bassett, and Brewer from Intervention in School and Clinic, 2012. I know Diana is a big fan of this article and is very excited to get to include it in this list. It's My Meeting, involving high school students with significant disabilities in the individualized education program process by Howard, Reed, and Francis, and that is in Teaching Exceptional Children 2020. Haven't got to say 2020 in a while. We'll also be talking about A Challenge to Self-Determination, Disagreement Between the Vocational Choices Made by Individuals with Severe Disabilities and Their Caregivers by Martin, Woods, and Gardner from Research and Practice for Persons with Severe Disabilities, 2005. And that will make up our topics. We actually had even more articles that we thought were close to that topic, more about vocational choice, and we'll talk a little bit about it more, I think, when we get to the episode recording itself. But we probably can come back to this topic many, many more times. And it's one that I know some of our listeners work with adults and work in transition services. Many of you do not. If download numbers or interest in some of these topics will give us that clue. But it is something that we're all very passionate about, because when it comes down to it, we spend a lot of time working with young children, or we have a lot of clients who are young children, which is, again, very important. But at the end of the day, most of us, and by most I mean almost everybody, spends the vast majority of their time as an adult. And adult services and adult supports tend to not get as much support as supports for younger individuals, which, again, there's reasons for that, and we talked about it a little bit on the show, but that tends to often mean that services past school age become less of a focal point, I think, for many of us. And I think it's good to always come back, even if you're not someone who works with individuals in adolescence or young adulthood or adulthood. It's still important to remember that at the end of the day, no matter where you're working, no matter what kinds of skills you're working on or the types of people you're working with, everybody will be an adult and need the different services that come from being an adult. So we're very excited to come back to this topic. All right, some other topics we'll be going over, partially as part of our general release schedule, but we've been doing our seasonal book clubs on the Patreon page for a long time. Now, most people, if you're on the free feed, you get to listen to our supervision book club, which I'll tell you what that's going to be in a minute, in September. But we do these all year. We do them once in the winter and spring and summer. And again, they're voted on by patrons. We've been very excited to do them. We always are joined by our friend Alan Haberman, and we have 2 hours where we talk about a book. We decided that we wanted to eventually release some of these to the free feed, just because I think for a lot of folks, based on a lot of reasons, you may not be able to subscribe on Patreon, or you're not really into that system. And we just, wanted to get our thoughts on some of these topics out there, because there are a lot of folks who have enjoyed the book clubs but can't always access them. So we do continue to release those about a year after they're released. So we'll have our book club coming out. We have enough of them now that we're going to be able to release them sort of within the general run of episodes. So we're going to be starting that this August. So we'll be releasing a book that we did last year's summer book club, and it is Street Data, which we did, last summer. So I guess it would have been last July. So we'll be talking about Street Data by Dugan and Saphir, which was a really interesting book at looking at equity in how we collect data in our school systems, and systems that may not always support the most meaningful outcomes for the students. And it was just a really interesting way to think about data and how it's collected, and how there can be a bias in data beyond just, I'm trying to get a result. There can be a bias without our planning for the collection of data. And for those of you who work and support teachers in the public school systems, or I suppose private schools as well, this book really did a lot to kind of share some extra ideas of how you could support teachers in their own collection of data, and also in ways that might be more in their own journeys for equity, as well as our own. So Street Data, we'll be releasing that. And that is a long podcast, so you're going to have a lot to listen to while you're sitting on the beach. And then finally, we're also going to be releasing our talk from the Thompson Center for Autism from last October 2022, I guess it would have been. Yeah. And we did a whole talk on quality of life. So we're going to release that audio this month as well. So you get a chance to sort of hear what our talks look like. Occasionally people say, hey, do you mind coming and talking at a conference? It's a little different than a podcast, though the format is similar enough, I think, for us at this point. But yeah, so that's going to be a talk on quality of life. So a little bit of a different flavor of conversation. All right, so that is what's coming out in August. If you are thinking, you know what, this book club sound pretty good, I think I do want to get some extra CEs, and subscribing, get some of these episodes early. Well, if you subscribe now, you'll also be able to get our July or our summer 2023 book club, which was all about Walden 2 by B.F. Skinner. So again, that was freshly released at the time of, I think, this recording going out to you all. So again, plenty of book clubs as well if you don't want to wait an entire year to hear about the book, and if you want to have some say in what our next books will be. All right. Well, looking into the future, we have September coming up. And while we don't have all of our articles set, we'll save that for our September preview. We did want to give everyone a heads up that September is our Supervision September. So we're going to be doing article reviews. We're finalizing our guests to talk about supervision. And then we'll also be releasing, we've kind of just started doing this, a September book club. So it's a little close to August. That's just how time works. And we love that alliteration. So Supervision September can't really be moved in terms of the calendar. So we'll be talking about a book that many of you have probably heard about, and hopefully many of you have been able to download it because it has been free, from Dr. John Austin, his book on results in terms of supervision-based leadership. I have not finished it yet, but I started it the other day, and I'm very much looking forward to adding it to our list of books that we've done to talk about supervision. We thought it was a good one because it was probably the closest to the release of a book and our ability to do a book club episode on the book that we've ever had. I think Skinner and B.O. and Walden 2 being sort of the longest distance between publication and a podcast episode, as well as it was a book that Dr. Austin released to many folks in the OBM and ABA communities for free. So if you have not seen that, he's been releasing in his newsletter, Dr. Austin's newsletter, you can get links to the ebook version of the book. So again, this is one that we thought a lot of folks might have been able to download, but may not have had a chance to read yet. So, hey, here's one way to sort of add to your reading experience, or potentially get the Cliff's Note version if you just don't have time to read the whole thing. But that's coming up in September. I just wanted to give you a heads up, because sometimes those books, they take a little bit longer than, say, an article review. All right, and so those are the big notes for what's coming up in August, and then bleeding it a little bit into our Supervision September. So let's move into the errata segment of the show. This is the time of the show where we sort of talk about other things going on in the world, as well as hopefully we got some great emails. I don't usually do that job, so I'm hoping to find the good ones. I know Jackie and Diana tend to do that, and they put them somewhere I was not able to find. So we may have some good emails. If you say, I wrote an awesome email, I can't believe they didn't read it, I'm sure it's somewhere in our email folder. But I forgot to ask where that was. And both Jackie and Diana are teaching class at the moment, so I cannot ask them. So in terms of what we've been up to, we've been doing a lot of preparation to get ready for the summer, for Supervision September. We've all got some time to some time off. If you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know that Diana and I have been doing a lot of ferrying our oldest son around to baseball tournaments. So we're both going to be away and at various other states over the next couple weekends, and then we'll have a little bit of time where the whole family is together doing some beach type activities. So that will be nice. And I know Jackie's been able to do a lot of trips with her family as well. So we really are very thankful for everyone who listens to the show, that we're able to, have an audience that would understand if we had to take a week off. But we're very excited that we have something out every single week. And have been able to do that for a number of years because we do really enjoy hearing from you, and we do really enjoy this field and sharing all of this, so much so that while we would never give up all of our vacations, we're very happy to give up parts of our vacations to continue doing this show. So thank you all for listening, and we appreciate that. We know everyone would be cool if we missed a week or two for the summer, but luckily for us, we have lots of other things we've done. We're able to work far enough ahead that we've been able to enjoy some time off, as well as continue learning and talking about behavior analysis, which we very much love. So that's kind of what we've been up to, just very, very busy times. A lot of movies this summer. I think this is the first summer in a long time, for a lot of reasons, that I've been able to go see many of the hit movies of the summer. I haven't gotten to see, at the time of this recording, have not gotten to go see Barbie and Oppenheimer and do the Barbieheimer, but I am very hopeful I'll be able to. I know my oldest son, when he's got some time off from baseball, expressed some interest in that. So we may do that double feature as well. If you've had a chance to, we hope you enjoyed them as well. Hopefully everyone's getting to see some fun movies themselves this summer. I know we talk a lot about movies on the show. And now's the time where we're going to talk about some emails. So I certainly mentioned Amanda. Thank you, Amanda, for posting on our Patreon page your thoughts on the poll. I'm very sorry it did not break so that we could get a direct instruction episode. But not too sorry, because I think the episode we are going to talk about is also going to be pretty awesome. Those were my two hopes that they won. And so I was in a good shape. I was in a good shape that way. And so since I do not have access to the folder where Jackie and Diana usually save some emails, I thought, well, I'll go to another place where I know there's a lot of people writing things, which are podcast reviews. So I'm looking at our podcast reviews. We don't look at them we look at them often, and we try to kind of think about them a lot. We don't usually read them too much on the show, but I had a couple here that I thought would be relevant. And so here's one from M. Smiley Face. Says, I'm loving this podcast. I wish I'd found it sooner. It's an easy and entertaining way to learn more about topics while earning CEUs. Well, thank you. We try very hard to make sure that we keep this entertaining, because I think if we just went over articles, it would lose a lot of the interaction you might get if you were able to get your journal club together. I know that's very hard for a lot of people. It was hard when we used to do it, which is why we have this podcast. So thank you very much, M. Smiley Face. Here's another one from Konya. It's a little bit older, but specifically speaking about our abduction prevention episode. I thought not only was this podcast episode interesting, but it was informative. It was interesting to learn how much you can prep your child and teach them about kidnappings, abductions, and they still give in to lures. Unfortunately, lures are really creative, and it is easy to prey on children who are easily gullible. Great episode. Wow. So thank you, Konyu, for specifically talking about that episode. I know that was one that Diana was very happy we had time in the schedule to do, and really wanted to make sure we made time to do it. And I know I learned a lot in terms of that episode. And my children are all a bit older at this point, but pretty soon after that episode, I think we'd done a few of the things, but I know I was able to look, and Diana and I talked about some of the skills, and we did a couple role plays, and our kids were not happy about having to do role plays. Like, I know not to go with people, Mom, but still, we were happy that we did a few of those, because it is a topic that I think many of us sort of assume it won't happen to us, or it won't happen as long as we make sure the kids know to be safe. And as everyone who's ever looked into teaching a skill or leadership knows just telling someone to know it is not the same at all as actually teaching them how to do it. And then finally, this is another recent one, BCBA Co. And it says, great, two out of three. And I think we'll get to what that means. Great for CEUs, solid literature reviews. The male host makes annoying, sometimes belittling comments about general content and about the female hosts who are great and mostly ignore him while I imagine we engage in a mutual eye roll. Ouch. PCBA Co. I'm sorry if you're listening to this episode. You're just getting 100% of me. So your review might go down. But don't worry, Jackie and Diana will be back. I do want to make sure, whether it's modeling good feedback-taking behavior, that we don't just read emails that say positive things. I know we've read some others in the past that talk about off-topicness. So this one was a little, definitely targeted to me. So it is something that I want to take into account. It is tricky, I think, because Jackie and certainly Diana, actually all of us have known each other for almost 20 years at this point. So there may be some topics or comments that sound belittling, but that are sort of within the everyone's known each other a long time shorthand that often happens, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not belittling or isn't kind of obnoxious, but may just not sort of rise to perception the same way that it would if, say, you were listening to one episode of our show and got one where I might be particularly rude or goofy and think this is what the show is always like. So that is something I want to definitely keep in mind. So appreciate the feedback. It's also tough because we do a lot of these podcasts and it's tough. We're just moving from podcast to podcast to podcast. So it is hard sometimes to stop and think, what are things that we might be doing that we want to do differently in the future? And then when you think too hard about it, it is something that, I've done this for seven and a half years now. So if I think too hard about how to do it differently, I sort of paralyzed. It's sort of like when you try to think about breathing and you're like, I don't actually know how I do that, which I know neurologically that's not how breathing works. But when you think too hard about something, that's sort of become a habit. But I will keep in mind that, and please, they will be the first, I hope, to tell you, I think both of our co-hosts are brilliant. I just figured out how to work the technology and enjoy asking people questions about the field. That tends to be my role. So I in no means mean to belittle either of my co-hosts. I'm curious, and I'd love to hear what my comments were about general content. Was that research content or pop culture content? Pop culture content, I feel like I could get more of a pass because we all have different opinions, and typically the role of the podcast recorder is to have strong opinions. But either way, if they're more about things that are specific that could be mistaken or rude, I'd definitely love to hear more about that. So I will keep that in mind. And we certainly do miss our co-hosts. So let's not keep going with too much more podcast because we miss Jackie and Diana, and we'll have them back. Don't worry, they'll be back in the next episode because we've already recorded that one, and they'll be back in the other ones because, again, we've already recorded most of the month working ahead. So we will wrap up here. Thank you all for listening to our preview of what's coming out in August 2023. If you want to make sure you don't miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be featured in errata or just share feedback, maybe tell me some other ways I could continue to improve as a podcast host, you can write us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Maybe Jackie and Diana have some feedback they need to hear too. I don't know. But again, same email address. And if you want to make sure to get all of our book club episodes early, as well as access to free CEUs and get all of our episodes ahead of time, it's patreon.com/ABAinsidetrack, where you can subscribe right there. All right, we'll be back with the first of our fun-filled August episodes next week. But until then, keep responding. Bye.